Hello and welcome to another video. In this video we're going to take a look at this Makita site radio. It's got no power. When we put a battery in, nothing happens. Got to be a bit of a common fault with these by all accounts. Battery's full. Put it on. And when we press the power button, there's just nothing there. So what we do, we get it tore down. First thing we're going to do is just take these two screws out of here. Shut the back and it'll let the screws fall into the back. So on the front here we've got 4 fixings. We're going to go ahead and take them out. To get them out all the way, you have to, they undo, and then you have to give them just a gentle sort of lift, because I think there's they are meant to be captive or something, I don't know, but here we go. Now, I've never seen or heard this working, so it's all a bit new to me. There go the screws at the back, and when we open it up, the first thing we're greeted with is a cable tie here. So we're going to get a pair of cutters and cut that. Let's get rid of that. Unplug the socket, unplug the power from the batteries. And let's flip it over. This is the area we're interested in, where this board is, because there's a fault on the jacks on these that's really common. Let's take this board out. Plug that from there, release this board, and we'll put this out the way and come back. Okay, we've got the little board here. Here we can see the power connectors, the plus and the minus. And we've got here the plus and the minus from the power jack. And we've got a diode here that's a protection diode to stop us putting things in backwards. And the actual fault is this little switch inside here. So I'm actually going to take the socket out of this and we'll have a look at it a bit closer. Now, there's a few videos on here where people are just showing you to short this out. So what I want to do is actually take this apart and show you what goes wrong and why it goes wrong. So let's heat it up with some desoldering braid. I have no real intention of putting the power socket back into this, but I just want to look a little bit closer into the failure that this suffers from. Can you come out for me? There we go. Come on. So there's the socket. Okay, so here's the socket. I'm going to lift this pin up. Now, when we look into there, we can see that when the plug is plugged in, it unlinks these two, because they are a switch that turns off the internal batteries. and it's that switch that's failed. I'm going to just try and encourage the two parts of the switch to come out. So here we can see what would be the two parts of the switch, and when there's nothing plugged in, they join together. When you plug the plug in, it lifts the two apart and disconnects them. Now what we now know is that this pin here is the power supply out. This pin here and this pin here we need to link together. That will disable that switching device. Right, so something I'm going to do that I've not seen done on any of the rest of these videos when they've linked this is I'm going to remove the diode that would connect the power from the main supply. Now the reason I'm doing this is if something was to get a bit shorted out here, you know, something gets pushed in the future, it could potentially cause a fault on the battery, and we don't want that. Not when we think these Makita batteries are 45–50 pound each. You don't want to risk them. So all I'm going to do is bridge these two with some solder. I am just literally, hopefully, going to build a little solder bridge across the top of them. And we'll let that cool off a minute. So if they were to come in contact with the old positive pin there, it's not going to cause any problems because we've took the diode out, which means there's no risk of a short circuit. Okay, so we retrieve the two screws out of here, and I'm going to clip a battery into place before we roll it back onto its back. Okay, so I'm not going to worry about plugging the auxiliary input back in. I'm going to plug this board back in place here, and then what I'm going to do is just plug the battery bank into there and just see if that comes back on. That sounds promising. Okay, so we need to test that. You know, I've got here an old phone, and it has a nice trick up its sleeve. Play by a radio. Okay, that's transmitting on 88.10. So let's just put that there and press scan. Not a bad sound actually. Hang on. quite impressed. Well, I'm quite impressed with that. That's not actually bad sounding. Now, obviously, this is an old phone. It's Nokia N88. I do keep it around purely because it's got this little FM transmitter in it, and for doing stuff like this, it is brilliant. So what I'm going to have a look at next is to see if we can actually fit a Bluetooth receiver to this. It's got a couple of inputs on it, a couple of auxiliary inputs on it, but I've got a Bluetooth receiver. However, it needs a 5-volt supply to run. So I'm wondering if there's anywhere in here that I can get either a 5-volt supply or a 12-volt supply from. We'll go and have a look. Okay, let's take a look what we've got here. Obviously an audio amplifier, a AM radio, which is like proper old school. I've got an input. Now, interestingly, each of these inputs let the radio section know whether it's in use or not. And some sort of voltage regulator here that's getting quite warm. So I'm kind of a little bit bamboozled as to where I could achieve myself a 12-volt supply at this point, or a 5-volt supply. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a little poke around. I'm sort of looking at these two capacitors here. That's the decoupling for the speakers. There's a nice power supply capacitor here, but there's a second one here, and what could well be a voltage regulator. So I think what we'll do, we'll lift the board off and see what sort of voltage is on the back of here. If I can find a 12-volt supply that turns on and off, I can always use a little voltage regulator to step it down to 5 volts. So let's have a little look. Okay, it doesn't want to move. Just sort of feel as though there's more holding it in than that. Oh yeah, there's another screw here that I've missed, isn't there? Oakley dokley. Okay, it does look like we've got some sort of voltage regulator here. So I don't know whether this will turn back on again now as we've unplugged part of the circuit, but let's have a little look. Okay, the part that I've unplugged hasn't stopped me from turning it on and off. So what we're interested in is what the voltage is across this capacitor here and this capacitor here. Okay, so this big capacitor here, we've got 19 volts on, and we've got another capacitor here, and we've got 19 volts on it. So it pretty much appears as though that doesn't provide any voltage regulation. So let's have a look at that. 19 on that one, 19 on that one. So makes you wonder. Right, okay, let's turn this off. Okay, it's off and in standby now. Now we've got 1 volt on there and 19 on there. So this big transistor here is switching the whole of the radio circuit on and off. There's another one here. Let's have a little look at that and see what we've got. Just turn it back on. And I'm going to just go with respect to ground, and I'm just going to have a poke at the output of this component here. Look, I've got 9 volts there. Okay, so does that 9 volts go away when we turn it off? It does. So I reckon that we've got a regulator here giving us 9 volts, which is running various different parts of the system, jumping out, going down there. That of course is also going to be regulating the power for the radio circuits, because the radios, the LEDs, they're all going to need a fairly stable voltage, and it makes sense it to be 9 volt because this will run on, I think, anything down to 12 volt batteries. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach me a live and a neutral out here, and we'll come out, we'll put this back in place, and let's have a look and see if we can wire the Bluetooth module in place of the front socket, and just fit this thing with the Bluetooth receiver. And solder that onto there, and then we'll go for the plus as well, which is just off the output of this IC, just here. Just reduce down the size of the end of my piece of wire, and there you go, just here with it. Quite small, quite delicate, but not impossible to solder to. And we'll put this back in place. Okay, so what I'm thinking I'm going to use is a 7805, a small capacitor on the output of it just to smooth it, because 7/8 series voltage regulators work by just switching the current on and off. The Bluetooth module that I've got has got a battery backup in it. I don't know how well that's going to work. I'm a little bit concerned that this won't, because I think that the problem I'm going to have is it only pairs when you turn it on. And so I don't think that this module's going to work. I've tried disconnecting the battery from it, and with the battery disconnected it won't come on. What voltage is on this battery? 3.5 volts. So the only way I can think of getting this working is we need a 3.5 or 4 volt supply. Okay, so far these regs in, neutral out. Just put a capacitor across the output. I'm not going to put a heatsink on it because we're going to draw such a small amount of power off it. So what I'm going to do now is we'll just turn it on and we'll see what voltage we get. If it's even capable of providing power from that connection. Now, there's something that's interesting. That was the voltage regulator charging the capacitor. I wonder if it's time for buck and boost. Okay, so what I've done, I've moved the supply back onto 18 volts. Okay, so I've been and got a little buck and boost board. Let's press the power button on the radio. At the moment, that's telling me we've got 5.2 volts out. Oh look, it'll go right down. So 3.5 volts. Let's just check that with the multimeter. Okay, 3.6 volts. I'm going to pull it down a little bit more. There are 3.5 volts. So the little converter board here is managing to do that. So we've got 3.3 in, 19.4 volts going in, and 3.3 out. Okay, that's brilliant. So we're going to take the battery off this and I'll wire that onto the output of this. Okay then, so let's see if the Bluetooth module comes to life. So far, not so good. Okay, there we go. It's coming up and letting me search for it. What we'll do is let's get a jack cable and let's jack that in to the line input cable here, and we'll do an audio test. So there we go, it's actually working. So it's a little Bluetooth receiver here, running off that, wired into the auxiliary in. Now, a little bit of tech here to do it. A little bit of heat there, but not a lot. So I think what I need to do is just leave this playing for a bit and make sure that it doesn't stop working, that it doesn't shut down or anything like that. And then if it does and it behaves, then we can mount it inside the radio. Okay then, quite a bit of time's passed and I've listened to lots of stuff that we can't listen to on YouTube. So I've decided I want to use this input. So yes, okay, you want to have your input as well. So what I'm going to do is this white wire here, this tells the receiver that there's something, that there's nothing plugged in, so it actually disables the input. So I'm just going to lose that because we don't need it. Now I'm not going to use the jack. I want to use this space here to mount the power supply and the Bluetooth receiver. So with that in mind, we're going to wire this directly onto here. So the white wire we've got here is this one here. It's connected to that red. So look, the two of them are linked together. So I'm going to start off by cutting that and cutting that, and take these two wires here, give them both a little strip. With a bit of heat shrink down here. We know that that's right because it just did that beep. Going to half twist that one that way, that one that way. So it's actually twisted the two of those together, which makes a really strong solid joint. It's pretty impossible to pull apart. Run a bit of solder down it, and we'll pop a bit of heat shrink over it. Okay, we need to repeat for the neutral. So it looks like the red wire goes to one of the channels, the white wire goes to the ground, and the green wire is the other channel. So the white's the ground, that's the one we really need to know about. In all honesty, with how close the two speakers are in here, you're not going to get anything in the way of stereo effect from it. The main one is that we get the ground in the right place. I've just pulled an audio channel off. When we look at this, all of this area is going to be ground. This is a ground. This is ground because it's the front. This is one audio channel. The other one was this one here. So I'm just going to clean up here and I'll just solder onto it here, or I might go to that resistor. I don't fancy doing that because the chances are as soon as I put some heat on there, it's going to lift off. So let's see what we can do. Okay, so yeah, I managed to clean that off. Hopefully I can get a good fixing on it. We'll see. Let's see. I have soldered the ground on, and feels like I'm using a shovel, a digger to do a drain hole. Yeah. Okay, so there's a channel. We've got the ground on. Let's put this channel onto here as well while we're here, and then the size of the cable in comparison to that. Let's just see if we can get it to take. We'll get it to take. We'll put some hot melt over it later. Okay, so that's the Bluetooth module wired in. Let's plug it back in. Let's turn it on. Okay, let's press auxiliary 1. Okay, let's get my phone and see if we can connect. Bluetooth says it's connected. So there we go. We've got Bluetooth. And what I'm kind of pleased about is I've still got the rear port if I wanted to plug something in. Obviously these days I don't think there's much that's actually got a headphone jack on it. I think my iPad has, but my phone hasn't, so I'm going to just mount these down in here with a bit of hot melt, see how it gets on. In fact, I think I probably can. I can mount this through here. That'll mount there quite nicely using the original fixing screw that came out. So that's going to hold that in position. Okay, and then we've got the Bluetooth module, which I think I'm just going to put just there on a blob of hot melt, because you know what, hot melt fixes all. We've got Bluetooth and power supply, so we're going to pop this cable back in place here, pop it onto its back and reinstate the screws in the front. And just to make sure things are working properly, we will play some audio through it. There we go. So there we go, Bluetooth. You know, that works really well. I'm very impressed with it. Obviously I've got to put the last 2 screws in the back, which we'll do now. Now, I don't know if on other voltages, like lower voltages, that buck and boost will work. You'll have to check that out yourself if you do this. But I've got 18 volt Makita batteries. The other thing I've left enabled is the port here will still work. So should you want to plug something in, you're still able to. Well, there we go, Makita radio. Turn it on, back to auxiliary 1. And there we go, the phone's just reconnected straight to it, no messing about. Well, I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope it's given you a bit of insight into these old Makita radios and a way to bring one back to life. I can't knock this thing, it's quite a cool little radio. Like I say, it's a little bit basic, but I think it'll be quite good in a large environment rather than a workshop. So let's see. Well, thank you for watching. Subscribe and all that malarkey if you fancy it, and have a look at some of the other stuff I've done. Thank you.